was actually talking to my mom, text messaging with each other about this upcoming trip, and that is the last time my family heard from JoAnn. She left behind her cell phone, she left behind her wallet, and her car. It didn't make sense to us how she would even leave. That was when we really knew that something was wrong.
This is True Crime Arizona, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast.
It's just a couple weeks before Thanksgiving in 2022, a busy time for just about everyone. There may be no better place to celebrate the holiday season than in New York City. Full of holiday lights, sights, shows, and entertainment. Definitely a change in scenery and temperature from Anthem, Arizona, where JoAnn Dudek lived.
My Aunt JoAnn was planning a trip out to New York to come see a show, spend some time with her sisters, and we were all in communication trying to plan that out.
That's Erin Murtha, JoAnn's niece, who also lives in New York. She says JoAnn made plans with another family member for Thanksgiving, then would be heading out to see all of them in the city.
So that was kind of where we were in early November of 2022. Then around the week of November 13th, we started to get a little bit concerned when we hadn't heard from JoAnn about any of the planning.
Which Erin says was completely out of character for JoAnn. This family talked all the time.
She was actually talking to my mom the evening of November 13th. They were text messaging with each other about this upcoming trip and flights. And that is the last time my family heard from JoAnn on the night of November 13th. There were no calls, there were no texts, there were no follow-up about the travel that she had planned that she was extremely, extremely excited about.
At first, the thought was maybe her phone was broken, but that quickly seemed less and less likely. Could she have gone somewhere and not told anyone?
We called hospitals, we called intake centers, we called anywhere where she might be, we called shelters, and they're just to double check everything, and there was no sign of her anywhere.
Erin, her mom, and their family is quickly trying to figure out what's going on. At the time JoAnn disappeared, her husband and daughter were both home. They tell Erin,
she left behind her cell phone, she left behind her wallet, and her car. So it didn't make sense to us how she would even leave without any of those very essential items with her. Clear red flag, clear red flag.
Soon things would start to get bizarre, and still are to this day, including possible phone calls and a mysterious and unexpected death.
That was when we really knew that something was wrong.
Who is JoAnn Dudek? Let's start from the beginning.
She was born and raised in Long Island, New York, moved to Massachusetts with her husband for the beginning of their marriage and relationship. And then I believe in 2004, moved out to Anthem for some reprieve from New England winters.
Anthem is north of Phoenix, with a bit more of a rural desert feel than in the city. JoAnn was the life of the party, a staple in her neighborhood, according to her niece Erin.
JoAnn was a walking ray of sunshine. She is so silly. She's loud. You can hear her coming from a mile away with keys jingling and, oh crap, I forgot this, I forgot that. She's just a personality, really takes over a room. She was a huge humanitarian. She very, very deeply cared about her community, about issues in her community. Since her disappearance, we've had an amazing number of neighbors and friends reach out to us and tell us nothing but amazing stories about JoAnn and how they love spending time with her and conversing with her.
She lived at home with her husband, Walter, and their daughter.
My uncle and my aunt had, to what I know, a very loving marriage. I cannot speak to the rest of the dynamics that occurred within their house. I wasn't there. I don't really know.
But what Erin does know is what meant the most to JoAnn.
one of her greatest joys in life was being a mother, and her husband worked very hard to bring home a daughter and raise a daughter, and she loved being a mother, and it was her only wish in this life to be a mother.
Like so many families have struggled with too, JoAnn and Walter went through the painful journey of infertility. That led them to pursue adoption, pouring their heart and soul into that.
When they learned that they weren't going to be able to conceive a child naturally, they did their research, hours and hours, and flights and calls and agencies, and they were able to bring home their miracle daughter.
The Dudek family was then complete. So it was JoAnn's husband and daughter who were providing information to Erin's side of the family as everyone tried to figure out where JoAnn was. But there was reportedly some contact between mom and daughter.
JoAnn's daughter claimed that she had heard from her in the form of a phone call. Our family has not been able to independently verify if that has happened or not. Her daughter and husband, according to them, went to the police station in Anthem to try and report her missing, but because they were told that contact had been made, they were unable to file a report at that time.
Days went by, Thanksgiving went by, no one had heard from JoAnn. That's when Erin's family just couldn't sit by and wait any longer. On November 26th, 2022, they were able to file an official missing persons report with the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office.
It is absolutely inconceivable to us that JoAnn would go missing and not tell her siblings, her best friends, where she was going. If there was ever a problem in our family, siblings ran to each other. And so the thought that there could be a problem that JoAnn was running from that would preclude her from reaching out to any of us or seeking help or telling any of us where she was going is completely inconceivable to us. Improbable, highly, highly, highly improbable. We want to know what happened to her. Something happened on the night of the 13th or in the days following.
Just weeks after MCSO began their missing persons investigation, there was a significant development.
We learned that a different division, the homicide division, took over the case early in 2023. Of course, hearing the word homicide division or being assigned to homicide investigators is not a hopeful word to hear. That being said, we are grateful for any resources that department can provide for more clarity on what happened that night, what were the movements of everyone that night.
As it stands right now, MCSO has given me confirmation of this. They do consider this disappearance suspicious and confirmed it is a homicide investigation. Investigators have served and searched multiple search warrants in this case to gather evidence, including potential DNA, and now are waiting on examination results. That's no doubt enough for Erin's family to be more than worried. A shot to the hearts of all of them who are trying to stay open-minded and positive where they can.
We are holding out hope, but we are deeply, deeply, deeply concerned by the circumstances surrounding JoAnn's disappearance.
What we do know is there were two people at home with JoAnn before she went missing, her husband and daughter. The two people who could at least piece together what was going on before she disappeared and who saw her last. This is where the case takes an unfortunate and unexpected turn.
Her husband, Walter, in around December, was reported to us that he had a seizure, and that was December of 2022, late December, and he learned that he had some unusual activity in his brain.
Erin says doctors told him they didn't really know what caused it. It could be a myriad of factors, including stress.
He passed away from complications related to a brain lesion in April of this year. Was his loss perpetuated by the stress and sadness of his wife being missing? We'll never know the answer to that. But me as a family member, it's hard to imagine that did not play a role in his death. So as this investigation has continued to move forward, that's just a resource for information that we no longer have, and it's a huge loss.
The only other person who was home at the time was JoAnn's daughter.
As this investigation has progressed, just to protect the integrity of the investigation and keep all of the focus on JoAnn and finding her and bringing her home, we are no longer in contact with the individual or individuals who live in the home.
The entire situation is emotional for everyone, especially because Aaron says their extended family lives all over the country. So trying to coordinate things from afar and keep up with the MCSO investigation when thousands of miles away can be difficult.
As we round the corner of 1 year, that has maintained the same. There has been no contact, no texts, no calls, no photos of her, no trace of her, no money spent on her credit cards.
It's why their family decided to all fly out to Arizona in mid-November of this year to hold a vigil and anthem for JoAnn after 365 days since she went missing and 365 days of very much missing her.
We want the community to know that we are not giving up, that we are as desperate for answers as they are.
At this point, there are some things Aaron's family feels strongly about. For one, they believe JoAnn is in Arizona.
We do not have any reason to believe that she is hiding out in another state or in another part of the country or in another country. We do believe what happened likely happened locally.
Second, there is nothing that indicated JoAnn was upset or wanting to remove herself from her current life.
This is completely out of character. We have reason to be deeply, deeply concerned about JoAnn's safety and well-being.
And third, Aaron's family does not believe anybody involved in JoAnn's disappearance is random.
A threat from a stranger is highly unlikely. We as a family find it highly unlikely that there was someone outside or random involved in her disappearance. If it was someone known to her that was involved in her disappearance, we hope that Maricopa County keeps their resources on this investigation and holds that person or persons accountable.
Aaron knows that can sound ominous. She also knows people listening to this probably have quite a bit of questions.
I completely understand that there are a lot of gaps in questions that people will have. The true, honest answer is that during any active investigation, our outcome, our goal, what we want at the end of this is resolution. And that if there are people who are involved in her disappearance, we want them held accountable. And the best way to do that is to let the police, let Maricopa County Sheriff's Office do their job, complete their investigation, cross T's and dot I's, and keeping some details out of the public eye are in our best interest. We hope that, God willing, in the future we will be able to share more.
This family has determination to keep JoAnn's case in the spotlight, in the media, as much as possible. As everyone, including investigators, waits for tests to come back and new details and information to hopefully come to light, JoAnn's family will not let her case fall into the shadows. Not one bit.
Our goal as a family is that we will not let this go cold. This is not a case that will go cold. This is not a case that will end up in a cold case file. No matter how much time goes by, we will find JoAnn and bring her home. We will never stop until we know what happened to JoAnn.
If you have any information in the disappearance of JoAnn Dudek in November of 2022, please call the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. Even the smallest of details or tips could crack this case wide open. True Crime Arizona, the podcast, is hosted by me, Brianna Whitney, and produced by Sergio Hernandez. It's a production of Arizona's Family, 3TV, CBS 5, and azfamily.com in Phoenix, Arizona.
This is True Crime Arizona, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast.
Why don't more infant formula companies use organic, grass-fed whole milk instead of skim? Why don't more infant formula companies use the latest breast milk science? Why don't more infant formula companies run their own clinical trials? Why don't more infant formula companies use more of the proteins found in breast milk? Why don't more infant formula companies have their own factories instead of outsourcing their manufacturing? We wondered the same thing. So we made ByHeart, an infant formula company on a mission to get a lot closer to the most superfood on the planet, breast milk. Our patented protein blend has more of the important and most abundant proteins actually found in breast milk. We're the first and only US-made formula to use organic, grass-fed whole milk, not skim. We even conducted the largest clinical trial by a new infant formula company in a quarter century, with clinically proven benefits like easier digestion, less spit up, and softer poops versus a leading infant formula. And we make our own formula in the USA and our very own factories in Iowa, Oregon, and Pennsylvania. ByHeart, a better formula for formula. Learn more at byheart.com.